Hello, welcome. What's up, guys? Thanks for trickling in. I'm Daniel. I'm Umee's head of marketing here. Thought I'd play a little music just to set the mood. I hate the Twitter spaces that are just dead silent as we wait for people to trickle in. So I hope you enjoy it. Just waiting for Waz and Brandon and then the Shade team to get over, but we should be getting started relatively quickly. Oh, I see Fisco's here. Hey, Fisco. For all of you unfamiliar, Fisco runs the strategic partnerships for Shade.
Hey guys, thanks for having us.
Happy you guys are here. Brandon just joined. Hello, Brandon.
Hey, what's up, everybody? We're going to give it a couple more minutes for people to trickle in, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
We got Carter here as well. For those of you unfamiliar, Carter is the lead researcher for Shade Protocol.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's going to be a fun one.
Welcome. Is the Shade account going to join as well?
I believe so.
It will be in a second here, yeah. But Carter and I will be speaking from our personals.
Cool.
We just got done hosting Agoric on into the Interchain, so we just hopped off that Twitter space. So the main account, there it is. Main account just jumped in.
Nice. I'm gonna invite them to co-host just to get the maximum people we can get, and yeah, I think everything's good. I hope you guys didn't mind my music too much. I'm gonna turn it off now.
The waiting room music is awesome. This is a first for me.
Thank you.
Very classy, Daniel.
Absolutely.
And Waz, I see you've joined finally, a little bit late.
Yeah, I'm really just here for the music, That's my whole thing.
All right, you can leave then. No.
Bye.
The music in the community, really.
We're pivoting. Umee is a music app now, and that's what we're doing. No,
Congrats, guys.
Let's go ahead and get started, guys. Well, everyone, welcome to another episode of Into the Umeeverse. We've got a really special guest today with Shade Protocol. We're really excited to have Carter and Fisco on. We'll get into that little Q&A in just a second. We've got some updates to share on Umee, just in general. So we've been making a lot of progress on the historical module. Remember that module basically to add just safety precautions to our oracles so that we can host low liquidity assets like those that are only listed on Osmosis. Waz, you want to give us an update on that?
Yeah, for sure. So recently we've kind of changed it up a little bit in order to service our IBC rate limiting, which is another protecting feature that we're adding in for our leverage protocol, just to make sure there's a maximum amount you can steal, if you can even steal. So that's super exciting. I was just talking with our engineers. We're going to have a PR up within the next hour or so. So hopefully code finished end of this week. We also went through a proposal for 3.2.0 recently, where a validator found out that an RPC endpoint wasn't working properly. So we kind of, galvanized the validator set and made sure to vote no on that. And we're going to release a new binary very soon, and we can go through that upgrade as well. That upgrade's just focused on re-enabling gravity bridge slashing to kind of make our gravity bridge more secure. But, once we have that prop up, I'm sure you'll see a bunch of tweets about it. But yeah, that's most of the stuff that we've been working with on the engineering side short term. It's super exciting, Brandon. It's going to be a lot of fun.
No, for sure. And safety has been sort of the theme of these last, I would say, since Cosmoverse. The Mango exploit or market manipulation has been sort of top of mind, because when you think about Cosmos, pretty much everything we're doing is a new asset. And new assets are always vulnerable because of their low liquidity or low volume. And so we have to be able to account for these things in order to support the Shades of the world, IST, all of your favorite stablecoins that are coming out. None of them are as big as USDC. That's just the fact of the matter. So that doesn't mean we can't support them. We just have to have the right safety precautions in place. And then also just to touch on the IBC rate limiting, Definitely this was heavily inspired by what Osmosis is doing. I think they do a little bit with Cosmosm. We don't have Cosmosm yet, so we're just doing it on the chain level and with some middleware. But yeah, that what that does for everyone listening is when you think about like the biggest hacks on Ethereum, you can think of numbers like hundreds of millions. I think some have even gone like to a billion. But the goal here is so that we can say, look, if there's ever an exploit, because no protocol is 100% safe, no matter how hard you try, there should be a maximum number that anyone can steal and then IBC away or bridge away. And so that's what this allows us to do. So instead of us ever having like an exploit where 100% of TVL is taken, it's always going to be a smaller percentage of that so that funds are safe. But yeah, that's the two major updates we've got coming out in the coming weeks. Once Historical is out, you'll see a bunch of proposals going out to add your favorite IBC assets. That includes things like Osmo, Stride assets, like collateral options, really cool stable coins, and that's just going to be the biggest update for Umee before the end of the year. So we're really looking forward to it. But with that being said, let's go ahead and turn it over to our guests. Shade Protocol is a really awesome project built on Secret Network, really focused on privacy, but also usability, which is always a really cool combo because that's been the biggest trade-off with privacy is usability. And Carter and the folks at Shade are working on some really great solutions for that. So with that, Carter and Fisco, do you guys want to give a quick introductions to yourselves and also Shade Protocol?
Hey guys, how's it going? Super excited to be here having this conversation. Thanks for hosting us. So for myself, I'm the head of strategic partnerships at Shade Protocol. So all of the working with other teams, other chains, DEX listings, all those conversations are coming through me. So for anyone listening, if you got stables in the Cosmos, if you got tokens in the Cosmos and are interested in listings, having a lot of those conversations right now. So I'm your guy. But thanks again for having us. I'll pass it over to Carter for an intro.
Yeah, so Carter Wetzel here. I'm the lead researcher at Shade Protocol. This vision has really been over 2 years in the making at this point. My specific journey started back in 2017. Huge fan of the MakerDAO community and the concept of decentralized stablecoins. But as someone first dives into blockchain, you discover the Ethereums of the world. It immediately becomes apparent that DeFi is completely transparent. I could be a massive institution or individual, and I could lock up collateral on a lending product, and my liquidation price point could be public to everyone, and people can start hunting those liquidation price points. Or if I'm a stable coin and I'm a company and I want to pay my employees, but there's where's the privacy for those transactions? Or if I'm working with contractors, where's the privacy for those agreements on chain? And so as a whole, the kind of founding philosophy of Shade Protocol is we believe that there should be transparency for public goods and privacy for individuals, and that you need to have kind of a compliance solution for the full granularity tied to confidentiality. And so about a year and a half ago, when we wanted to tackle privacy preserving DeFi, we said, which tech stack actually has live functioning private smart contracts? That's where we found Secret Network and started to build out all of the key primitives in decentralized finance. We actually started with Secret Network's first and largest staking derivative. We launched a bonds product, first ever in the Cosmos, for anyone familiar with an Olympus DAO-esque product. And the really big products now that we've been building up for the last year and a half is a privacy-preserving lending product, a privacy-preserving stablecoin that's super unique and differentiated. It's called Silk, which I'm sure we'll really dive into today. And then we're also launching Shade Swap, which is a constant product AMM, but also has concentrated liquidity and a very, very unique stable swap coming with it. So all three of those products are going live Q4, Q1. And we're super pumped to not only launch these products, but to really go into the Interchain with Shade as this powerful governance token, and Silk as this really uniquely differentiated stablecoin that is one of a kind on the market. So that's kind of a background at a high level of the products, the story, and the reasoning.
No, that's really interesting, and I guess, like you mentioned, silk is probably one of the biggest topics we want to get into. Given it's one of the most intriguing stablecoins coming to Cosmos, just with the privacy aspect, but also some of the mechanics behind it. And I threw up a poll yesterday, or maybe the day before, and I only included like the launch stablecoins like CMST, USK, and IST on like which one should we focus on. And it was interesting because a lot of the comments were like, we need to focus on silk, like silk is where it's at. So would love to dive into some of the mechanics around it. So like, how does silk actually work, and how can people look forward to using it?
Absolutely. So let's start with the vision of silk and the attributes that differentiate it, and then we can kind of zoom in on the mechanics in terms of the stability, integrity, and security of silk as a stablecoin. So the vision for silk is simple. We have this opportunity in Web3 to build truly differentiated and unique currencies. And Bitcoin emerged as this decentralized asset, but it had volatility. And it's really hard to have a volatile asset in commerce, right? And so this is where the Tethers of the world came in, the USDTs that said, hey, we can solve the liquidity problem. And the decentralized finance community was actually using a lot of Tether and eventually USDC because it has a very strong integrity guarantees, although there's massive risks to centralization as we've seen with like the FTXs that happened recently. And so the DeFi community said, can we build a decentralized stablecoin that has stability but can't be censored? That is permissionless, right? And that's where MakerDAO emerged. That's where DAI emerged as a stablecoin. But when we sat down 2 years ago to begin building Silk, there was this really big cognitive dissonance. How can we say we're building the future of currency if decentralized currencies are pegged to centralized monetary systems? Are dollar stablecoins, even if they're decentralized, are they truly living up to the ethos and potential of what we can build in Web3? And so Silk, the first attribute that you should know about is it's not pegged to the dollar. It's pegged to a basket of global currencies and commodities. It has Bitcoin and gold included as approximately 25% of its composition, which offsets people losing purchasing power over time. It offsets the effects of inflation from global currencies. And then you have the likes of the British pound, Canadian dollar, the US dollar, the euro, the yen, also included in this tracked target peg. And the net result is that we believe one day Silk will be an interoperability hub between global currencies. Mom and dad don't need to participate in Forex markets to hedge against inflation. They can just hold Silk. That's our end vision for Silk. It's this commerce hub that people can hold where you are protected from the global volatility of any given currency. The second attribute is privacy. We believe that privacy is intimately integrated with this concept of sovereignty. And if we want businesses and commerce to thrive, you have to have privacy. Like if you're doing your commerce on chain, competitors would know exactly when customers of your competitor bought a product and how much the product was worth, and even at what time that product was sold. Fundamentally, you need a degree of privacy for commerce to function, and so you need a stable coin that not only has stability in terms of purchasing power, but has that privacy. And the third attribute of Silk, besides the fact that it has this decentralized peg and the privacy, is that it's built on top of all these other key financial primitives. I call them the verbs of crypto. You want to be able to send. You want to be able to trade. You want to be able to stake. We want to build out every key verb for users to seamlessly be onboarded into Silk to truly have that endgame adoption. And Silk, of course, is decentralized. There isn't a PSM module that's just USDC and then you mint out dollars and you say you have a decentralized stablecoin. There's a dissonance there. That's not good enough. We can do better. And so we're using decentralized L1 collateral such as Secret, such as Atom, maybe such as the Umees of the world. And we believe that we're building a truly futuristic currency.
No, it sounds really amazing, and it almost reminds me, you're right. private transactions are kind of essential, especially to getting like the normies of the world to come on. And it reminds me of like one time I was showing my mom how like you can track transactions on the blockchain, and she was basically like, "Are you stupid? Like, why would you want your transactions to be like out in the public?" And so, like, to a person that's not in crypto, it's really a foreign concept of like, why would you want all your transactions to be public? So Secret definitely provides a lot of that opportunity, and it sounds like Shade is going to have like even more functionality on top of that. I'm curious, so what is the actual like minting process look like? You mentioned like there's going to be things like Atom, things like Secret. Is that in the form of like a hard peg? Is there going to be some sort of liquidation process? What can people expect with that?
Absolutely. That's an excellent question. So we've talked about the attributes of Silk and why it's special. Now we can talk about the mechanics that make Silk what it is. So we'll start with the target peg. Essentially, with something like DAI, it's tracking $1. So if you put in $150 worth of collateral and there's a 150% collateralization ratio, you can mint out 100 DAI, because each DAI is targeting a $1 peg on the smart contract. Like that's what in terms of what DAI is worth, the smart contract is always going to treat it like it's worth $1. Even if on the market, DAI is trading at $1.02 or 98 cents, the smart contracts, they don't know about that. They don't care about that. All the economic levers treat it at $1, right? And then there's arbitrage whenever something's over or under peg. In arbitrage in relation to the smart contracts to the market that maintains the market's peg to the smart contract target, right? That's how that works. So Silk, the minting contracts, instead of targeting a static number, instead it's tracking a slowly moving number, and that target price is an aggregate from the Oracle. So what we do is we grab, you have weights assigned to each of the components of the basket, and then there's an amount tied to that weight multiplied by a price. And so you essentially summate across every single one of the currencies and commodities with their dollar amounts and with the weights, and it spits out a target price that the smart contracts are treating as law, right? And so no different than targeting that $1 peg. Instead, these smart contracts are targeting this slowly moving price, and the arbitrage all slowly shift with this kind of glacial change in what Silk is targeting. So Silk might start out at $1.05 if we're going to be using dollar as our reference currency. And then a year later, Silk might have appreciated in value to $1.07, right? Now, for a euro, if you're holding euros or a different currency, it might be a different paradigm. But for the sake of simplicity, we'll use dollars as our reference currency. So long and short, you aggregate across, you have your target peg. That's what's considered law in the smart contracts. Now, the same thing is happening on the, I guess we can talk about the liquidation side of things. So no different than MakerDAO, you have different vaults. So you could have an Atom vault where you can mint out Silk against that moving target peg with a certain collateralization ratio. And if your vault ever drops below an acceptable collateralization, what happens is there's this something we call the stability pool. And essentially what the stability pool is people are depositing their Silk into the stability pool. And anytime there's a vault that drops below its acceptable collateralization, what anyone in the community can do is essentially trigger the liquidation. And what happens is Silk gets sent to the smart contract and the Silk gets burned. So this is the mechanism that sucks Silk out of the market to make sure that Silk holds its collateralization ratio. That means that we're able to comfortably hold. And in return for that Silk being pulled out of the stability pool and getting burned, what then happens is the assets from the vulnerable vault get liquidated and get sent to the folks that deposited Silk into the stability pool. So the stability pool is earning liquidated assets at a discount, and in return for providing that service to everyone, providing that supply sync to make sure Silk is getting pulled out of the market, they're earning the liquidated assets at a discount. And it's also done in an equitable way. It's not a first come, first serve where you have your super fast arbors winning all of the liquidations. We've actually designed it so that these liquidations are in a democratic, equitable way being distributed to this stability pool that anyone can participate in. So that's kind of a rundown of the liquidations and how Silk tracks its peg. Happy to dive in deeper on any questions tied to the mechanics.
No, that was an awesome explanation. And I'm curious, how does the Shade token itself fit into all of this? Like, what are the applications and the use cases?
Absolutely. So it's really interesting because the story of Shade Protocol has evolved. 6 months ago, we were looking at Terra's model. We saw risks with it, and we kind of wanted to make tweaks with it. And when Terra collapsed, we had to essentially go back to the drawing board and say, we were assuming the assumptions of their model, and the model broke. So we need to revert to the safest known model on the market. And our community has been super supportive during that process. And it's actually, can you repeat the question? I actually just lost track. I went right into storytelling mode.
No worries. Just how does the Shade token itself fit into the protocol?
That's what it is. So, because originally Shade was going to have a role in have like a direct relationship with Silk, right, in some sort of dynamic way. But because we've reverted back to this model, Shade and Silk are really uncorrelated from each other at this point. There is no, hey, you can mint out Silk with some sort of seniorage mechanism. That doesn't exist anywhere in the protocol at this point. So Shade at this point is this governance token. Not just a governance token, though. It's also sitting at the middle of all the rewards and fees throughout all the dApps on the protocol. So as a Shade staker, it's going to be a real yield model where initially you have, of course, your emissions model to attract users. But over time, fees from Shade Swap, fees from the stable swap, fees from the staking derivative, fees from bonds, fees from interest, fees tied to Silk, fees from liquidations from Silk. These 6 or 7 different fee streams will get distributed back to Shade stakers. So we're really aiming to have a real yield model. But yeah, currently no direct relationship between the two tokens beyond governance and fee sharing.
Okay. No, I think that's actually a good thing because like there's been a lot of advisory around like having endogenous like abilities to and using endogenous assets to be able to mint a stable coin. So I think you guys kind of get out of that by doing that. And I just think like, you know, when I was thinking about Shade Protocol 6 months ago, like you mentioned, it was kind of like a private version of UST, right? But it's completely revamped that process. So I'm really glad that you guys have done that. I mean, just by not pegging it to $1 is already really interesting. And so, yeah, really looking forward to it. If you can share, I mean, you've kind of gone into the minting mechanisms, what its use case for, what it's used for. I would love to know, like, what's the long-term vision of Silk? Because, you know, you have things like USDC, which are seeing adoption on like, for example, on Coinbase, I can have a debit card that I pay for things with USDC. What's that look like for Silk? Like, are you gonna build all that out on secret so that it maintains privacy? Like, what does that look like?
For sure. So it's really interesting because we're really focused on the commerce side of Silk integrations. And what that means is until I can use Silk in a coffee shop, whether it's through a debit card or through some sort of, you know, merchant has a server that accepts Silk, we really don't view the mission as complete, right? Like we're going for global adoption here. And so in 2023, I really consider 2023 what I call the year of mobile for Shade Protocol. And I don't want to leak what that entails, except I'll say we're extremely conscientious about building the fiat on-ramps and infrastructure to get Silk integrated into commerce. We're really pivoting from, hey, we've built all the key DeFi primitives. We've built these very powerful products. Now what does it mean to onboard users into this suite of product in the most frictionless way, regardless of your understanding of, for instance, like gas tokens, right? Like even the concept of gas is like way too big of a friction point for 99.9% of the world. So we're going to be tackling that in 2023. The good news is that in a domain that has no patience is a superpower, I think. And so for Silk, that we have like decade long vision for where we want to go. And we have a very patient approach to improving the UI, UX, and kind of going after the more Web 2 commerce side of things. So stay tuned for that. Very, very excited for what that's going to entail.
No, that's really cool. I mean, having a long-term vision is really important. And the fact that you guys are focusing on mobile really shows that you guys are. I guess one of the biggest friction points to Secret in general, at least initially for a lot of users, is the sort of the wrapper function to actually get to like a real SNP20 asset. How will like Silk interact with other protocols that aren't private? Like, will it have to go through that wrapper to get out to like an osmosis, for example? Like, how does that process?
Sure, that's a wonderful question. It's one of the questions that we're kind of obsessed with solving in the next 6 months. So with the launch of ShadeSwap, the stable swap Silk and Lend Q4 Q1, one of the things that's launching side by side with it is a brand new bridge UI UX. So currently there's like this 3, 4, 5 step process that's quite confusing to get another L1 token onboarded on the Secret Network. And we're turning this into essentially a 2-click process on the way in and a 1-click process on the way out. And we're actually pushing really hard to get wallets to support, multi-execute transactions to try to minimize like any amount of clicks involved here, so we can embed multiple transactions in a single interaction. So totally agree. To date, the bridging experience on Secret Network has been dismal, to be honest. And kind of the bridge UI UX we're launching, it's actually going to be so good that we want people to use it as their bridge solution for IBC, period. So you won't have to be a Secret Network user to use the bridge. You'll be able to transfer assets from, the Junos of the world to Osmosis, or from Umee to Atom, right? Like it's a totally generalized IBC UI UX that happens to be focused on solving that UI UX friction point when you're being onboarded into the Shade Protocol DeFi suite and Secret Network in general.
No, that's really cool. Does that include like multi-hop? Like if I want to send, I don't know, like Osmo from Umee to Juno, it goes back to Osmo, then to Juno. Like, does that functionality included?
So if you're talking about CW20 support, where app-specific tokens can be moved around, initially it's supporting the CW20 support, I believe, for Secret Network. It might be generalized for everything, but I'd have to double check on that.
Well, I'm actually talking about just like IBC tokens, like in the bank module.
Don't have the specific answer. I can check with the bridge team if multi-hops are supported. I don't think so. I think the current state is A to B. So not super aware of the multi. Actually, I'd love to learn more about that. Has that been implemented anywhere so far? I'd love to look into the standard.
Not as far as I know, but it's something that I think is really needed in the ecosystem. I'm sure the SDK team is probably looking at it as well for the IBC team. But really, there's an issue in that if you want full-on composability between two chains, you have to have a multi-hop IBC router in a lot of cases, because the issue is IBC is path denominated. So it's like if Osmo is on Umee, it's not the same as Osmo on Juno. Right. And so you really have to send an asset back to its native chain before you can send it to the next chain where you want to do DeFi. So like say, for example, on Umee, I want to borrow a bunch of Atom so that I can put it in a Juno swap pool. Well, in order to do that, I borrow the Atom on Umee, I send it back to the Cosmos hub, and then I send it to Juno. And so that multi-hop interaction is a little bit of a kind of a bad UX in my personal opinion. And so however we kind of solve that is probably a path to better UX. And Axelar actually has a really cool function for swapping or for sending IBC transactions from chain to chain that they support via generating a deposit address on Axelar. So like if you want to send USDC from Umee to Osmo, you actually do it through the Axelar bridge, their SDK, and it generates a deposit address on Axelar that it IBC transfers to, and then that automatically transfers it to your Osmo address. So really, really cool functionality there. I'm excited to see if it can be brought to IBC in general.
Definitely. We'll look into multi-execute. We do have integrations with XLR en route actively. So I don't know if it's the multi-execute component. I think it's just the ERC20 transfer over to IBC that we're going to be supporting, but You've got me all fired up. Now I want to look into multi-execute. So thanks for putting that on my radar.
Yeah, man. If you can build that out, that would be absolutely sick. But I know we're already half an hour in. This is a cool conversation. I'm really interested. I want to know more about the stable swap, man. That sounds interesting. What can we expect from that?
Sure. So it's really fascinating that it's late 2022 and we really haven't seen a center point for stablecoin liquidity emerge anywhere in the cosmos, especially considering that the composability of IBC absolutely allows for something like that to emerge. So this is something that we spotted in early 2022. And one of the problems we encountered, because we started talking with other decentralized exchanges, and there was two things. First off, it didn't seem like stable swaps were being prioritized from DEXs, which I'm not entirely sure why, except maybe the difficulty of it. And then the second piece is a lot of these DEXs kind of said, hey, I'm not sure we'll be able to support Silk because it's a dynamic stablecoin and it's not, targeting $1, which kind of felt like a cheap answer, because there's definite engineering solutions to dynamic assets within a concentrated liquidity context, because Uniswap v3, Uniswap v2 have solutions for this. So we kind of were like, well, if there isn't a stable swap in the cosmos and existing DEXs don't seem interested in putting in the engineering legwork to be able to handle dynamic assets that are have oracles involved, then I guess we'll go build it, I guess. So we started kicking off research into StableSwap. We had a couple of mathematicians start off by looking at Curve, and we wanted to improve on Curve. Like, one of the philosophies of Shade Protocol is that it's not good enough just to add on privacy to a DeFi product, even though that's a massive differentiator. You should also improve on the fundamentals of whatever product you're building in the first place, right? And so with Curve, we looked at two pieces. The first piece was the design of the curves, and the second piece was how they were computing outputs on their stable swap. And so one of the things in the released white paper for the stable swap is we've proven that the mathematical method that we're using for our stable swap is more computationally efficient than what Curve is doing. Like the mathematicians quite literally, if Curve used it, if they adopt the mathematics that we kind of put forward, they would be saving gas fees for their users, which is super cool. That's just a resource for the world that anyone can now use kind of the methodology described in the white paper on that front. And then separate from improving the gas efficiency of the stable swap, there was something kind of long ago that we noticed about Curve. So if you look at Curve, there's two pieces. You have a flat section of the curve, which is essentially where all the liquidity is concentrated, and that's where the trade experience is really good. And then you have the two tails on the curve where slippage starts to increase. And slippage is really interesting because essentially the curve is discouraging people from trading a certain direction, and this is like a protection, because you want the trading experience, you want the liquidity to essentially return to an equilibrium on the curve. And the way Curve handles these two outside curves is that they're both symmetric. They're both completely symmetric. And we kind of challenged ourselves and said, wait a second, what if you had asymmetric control over the tails such that you could essentially on one side of the curve have more aggressive slippage to protect an asset and to more encourage arbitrage to return it to an equilibrium. It's essentially a form of capital protection that liquidity providers could create within a concentrated liquidity context. And we ended up, the research went through all this, looked at the risks of it from the mathematical standpoint, and we were able to essentially pull off the world's first asymmetric tails tied to concentrated liquidity. We're still kind of waiting for Ethereum folks to find the white paper and be like, wait a second, this is a massive innovation, because you can control not only the flatness of the curve, but also asymmetrically you can control the behavior of the tail ends. And so the inevitable next question is okay, what's the use case of being able to have asymmetric control over the tails? And the answer for us is we don't fully know when these capital protections are going to be integrated. We have a sense that maybe for stable coins or for staking derivatives, that there be some really interesting behavior that can be created and protections that can be put in place on those types of concentrated pools. Also, liquidity providers that want to make their own market they might just appreciate that flexibility when they're designing their own pools. So we don't fully understand the implications, but the flexibility is there, and we're super excited to see where that leads us. And those are the two pieces that have been innovated. Oh, and privacy, of course, world's first privacy preserving stable swap. Why not?
No, that's awesome, man. I mean, I share a lot of the same sort of thought process as you. Like, it is kind of crazy to me that it's almost the end of 2022 and there's not a stable swap in Cosmos, right? Like, it's not like these things don't exist. So I'm just curious why they haven't been integrated into like a lot of the different dexes. But yeah, it's something that I'm looking forward to personally. And, you know, I guess, well, we're at 35 minutes in, so I think we should probably switch to some community questions now. So if anyone wants to hop on and ask a question, feel free to do so. But other than that, I guess we'll go with some questions from our Discord. So Carter, I didn't want to ask any like too hard questions, but because this isn't like a gotcha thing, but we do have a lot of people asking about the recent sort of issues being talked about on Twitter with I think there was some sort of exploit. And so do you want to just give a little bit of clarity on what actually happened with Secret and how that affects you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a gotcha question. There's two pieces with Secret Network. There's the integrity of consensus and there's the confidentiality of metadata. And the first thing I want to make clear is that the integrity of consensus on Secret Network, even when confidentiality is compromised, is not impacted. So that's the first thing I want to make clear. Just because someone can break confidentiality does not mean they can actually modify the ledger at will. So that's step one. Step two, want to make it super clear that Secret Network was live on 2020 with trusted execution environments. And since then, there's been a roadmap release where there's essentially going to be rotating keys, threshold level encryption, as well as TEs. And one of the concerns from the community and one of my concerns for Secret Network was, hey, we have this kind of beautiful first-to-market functional technology. Privacy-preserving smart contracts do not exist anywhere else currently. That's just like kind of the current state of things. And we understood that there is risks to being first-to-market on the engineering side. And for me, the recent white hack disclosures, there was 6 different like Ivy League-esque universities working together that have been working on breaking Secret Network SGX since 2020. So this is kind of the culmination of 2 years of research from a bunch of higher ed institutions working on breaking the enclaves on Secret Network. And they ended up pulling it off, which is super, it's super scary, but it's also this massive opportunity for growth and for the technology to continue to be hardened. So the disclosure was made to the protocol team. It was patched, and now the protocol level team, it really has to sit down and be very focused on going beyond trusted execution environments. Now, the advantage to trusted execution environments is the performance and scalability. So if you're going for full-blown cryptographic solutions, it's very, 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 very difficult to do that with smart contracts. The flexibility is just not there. And then the performance side of things, it's hard to have a lot of throughput. And so Secret Network TEs, if we can strike a middle ground between performance, scalability, flexibility, and hardened security, then it really is, as a tech stack, going to be in a really good spot. But factually, there was an exploit with a group of white hackers. They've been working on it for 2 years. Disclosures were made. The patch was made. Is it concerning? Absolutely. Is this the end of Secret Network? Absolutely not. It actually means we have access to some incredible researchers. We have really good communication with multiple trusted execution environments, such as Intel, in terms of as a partner. And I look forward to the security continuing to improve over time. One of the things is there's a lot of privacy folks coming out of the woodworks that are saying like, hey, like Secret Network, we're broken, it's all over. And the way I view it is, well, where's the other private smart contracts? Where was the other folks out there that are like attempting to put it out there and attempting to continue to improve the solution? I think we'll look back on this year as a big turning point for Secret Network, because I think it's going to expedite the speed of cryptographic integration into the hardware level solution. So that's my answer to the question. I'm still optimistic. Facts are facts. Things were broken, but I look forward to the hardening of the tech stack and continued adoption of it.
No, that's a great answer, and it's also just a good thing that this was found before Silk even launched, right? So like, it's not like your Silk transactions were exposed or anything like that. So good timing for you guys. Let's see. So the next question is kind of a downer Discord today, guys. I think some of the Kujira people are in here flooding you guys, but we've got let's see. So one of the sort of concerns with privacy in general is government regulation. I guess if you look at like what happened to the Tornado devs, right? Like it's really a shitty situation for them when you have like actual scammers that aren't in jail, but you have Tornado devs in jail. So is there ever a concern in general with Secret or with Shade at all about what government regulation means for you guys, and how do you guys kind of stay ahead of that in terms of like being able to be compliant but also maintaining privacy?
Absolutely. So it's completely relevant. If we want to build privacy preserving DeFi, there has to be a path to compliance. That's actually been part of our theory for day one, is that Secret Network provides the viewing key architecture to have compliance frameworks built in. And so we're part of two things. So the first piece is we're a part of something called the Universal Privacy Alliance. It's something that I actually helped found at its very origins. And it's essentially all the different privacy projects in Web3 working together to essentially try to have our voice be heard within the regulatory environment. It's at its earliest stages, but it's been very encouraging to see since Tornado Cash, the privacy community kind of as a wake-up call saying we need to get connected to regulators in kind of a more aggressive fashion. We need our voices to be heard because privacy fundamentally is important to commerce. And there's many legitimate reasons for privacy, and we need to come up with a framework that can work. The second piece is that, at least for Shade Protocol and the team, we've invested pretty heavily in terms of the legal side of things. So we do have people actively advocating for us and people who are essentially actively researching emerging legislation and how that would impact Silk and the privacy side of things. So I said 2023 was the year of mobile. I view 2024 as kind of the year where we build an entire KYC AML protocol on top of this privacy preserving DeFi. So for now, we're just trying to get the rails and primitives in place. 2023, we're working on the onboarding, and 2024 is really where we build out a whole legal framework that people have the sovereignty to interact with. So overall, I'm bullish on our ability to be compliant with viewing keys on Secret Network, but we need to do a better job of building like very defined protocols that make it easy for everyday folks to decrypt their transactions, hand them off to an auditor, and while maintaining their privacy on chain.
That's a really good answer. And this next one definitely comes from a Kujira fan because they've got the little in their name. How are you going to be working with other stablecoins like USK and maybe the ISTs of the world? First thing I can think of is you guys love private transactions. They love private repos for their stablecoin protocols. No, I'm just kidding. Please don't murder me on Twitter, Kujira fans. But realistically, how do you see yourself working with these different stablecoins that are maybe they look at themselves as a competitor to Silk, but maybe they're not competitors?
Yeah, I think it's there's no need for PvP in any capacity. So first thing, we're hosting a stablecoin summit, first ever in Cosmos history, December 20th, and the participants are Agoric with IST. Comdex is actually going to be represented with USK, Shade Protocol with Silk. We're working on getting MakerDAO potentially represented on there, and we have other excellent guests such as Jack Samplin. I think Stride is also going to be hopping on there too. So Shade Protocol as the host of that, we're actually super excited to get all the stable coins in the same room to have people to be able to dig into the mechanics and how can we all improve the security and the stability of our protocols. How can we have different attributes that emerge for the various stable coins? And specifically for Silk, we're launching a stable swap. We want to be the home for all decentralized stable coins. So USK will be listed on our stable swap. There will be USK represented on the stable swap. And for Silk's not pegged to the dollar. So it serves a very differentiated role from IST, USK, Tether, DAI, all these things that are tied to the dollar. Like Silk is not trying to solve the dollar problem. We're really trying to solve the like a truly decentralized stable problem. So from my end, I'm a huge fan of the Kujira community, the comeback story, post Terra, all of the hard work that's being put into Kujira to ship products. I just want that community to know, huge fans of what they're doing, and we look forward to collaborating with all the decentralized stables.
For sure. And yeah, I mean, that's the key, right? Like if you're going to build a stable swap, or even if you're neutral when it comes to these things, like you have to accept, like if there's a project like USK, regardless of their differences from the rest of Cosmos, they have a community. They're obviously not like scammers or anything. Like, well, I shouldn't say obviously, because who knows what could happen, but they're a great team. They're easy to work with and everything. So you have to support a project like that. Like it's just they're part of the community. So yeah, kudos to you guys. That's really a great stance to take. I guess the last question, and we can wrap up with this, is how will Umee integrate with Silk and Shade in general? I could take a little bit of this. So at the very least, you'll see Silk on Umee as a borrowable asset and something you can deposit as well. Once it starts building up enough liquidity, you could also see it as a collateral option. It's just a little, you have to have a little bit more liquidity and volume in order for that to be allowed, just based on liquidations and stuff like that. So those are kind of the key requirements. And then we also have to have price oracles and stuff like that. So definitely all in the works, and we'll be able to support that. There's some even cooler integrations we can do as well. Like, for example, we've at Umee, we've talked about how do we incorporate like privacy into our protocol. And maybe one of those paths is you take your supplied assets on Umee, you convert them into a secret asset, and you can use them maybe in like Shade's leverage protocol or something like that, so that you can basically have composability between the protocols too on a leverage basis. So all of this is very much in the future, and definitely want to see what the further partnerships we can achieve are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm first off just super pumped to bring Silk into the Interchain, into the Umees of the world. Really look forward to interfacing more with the Umee community as we get close to the launch of Silk. And in terms of how Umee could integrate into Shade protocol, I mean, I think a big one is we have our, the DEX isn't just a stable swap. It's also, there's concentrated liquidity. It's also constant product rule AMM. So would definitely be interested in getting an Umee pair and increasing the accessibility to something like Umee on top of, Shade protocol in the Cosmos on the liquidity front. So maybe that's something that we can look forward to and map out. And then in terms of the lending side of things, post product launch, would definitely be interested in exploring, what that type of teamwork could look like in collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here, because like I know a lot of people might think there's a competition aspect, but really focusing on two very different things with privacy versus just like the open ecosystem as well. So a lot of cool things that we can accomplish together, and I think I'm really just excited to see what happens with Shade. Carter, Fisco, do you guys have any final thoughts before we end the space?
There was one last mechanic that I think is worth mentioning that I didn't have a chance to touch on, but it actually has to do with Silk's composition. One of the really unique pieces we've said is like, we don't know where the dollar is going to be in 20 years, 40 years. We don't know where the euro will be. We don't know where like the global economy will be. So Silk actually has the ability to add or remove assets to its basket over time. It also has the ability to modify the weights. So even while Silk is dynamic with its target peg, over time, governance has the ability to evolve its composition. And I just wanted to bring that up as like, that was the third attribute. I think I talked about Silk being integrated into an app ecosystem, but that was actually the attribute I was looking for, that it has the ability to evolve beyond its current state. And I think a lot of stablecoins, like I would call this new category of stablecoin like a reflexive stablecoin. It's capable of evolving over time. I think we'll see more of these begin to emerge. And also for like dollar stablecoins, I think potentially like engineering solutions that would allow them to evolve over time too. So that was my last piece I wanted to add in there.
Awesome, man. Fisco, do you have anything?
Not much from my side. Just wanted to throw out the stablecoin summit once again. I know Carter mentioned it, but if you head to our page, Shade Protocol, Twitter, it's the pinned tweet. If you guys are interested in learning more about all of the Cosmos stables and several Ethereum stables as well, just head over there. It's going to be around 4.5 hours of discussion around infrastructure, around thought leaders in the Web3 space, and a lot on stablecoins. So just open invite to the entire Umee community to hop on over, check out the Stablecoin Summit as well.
Other invitation. Shade Protocol hosts something called Into the Interchain every Wednesday. But one thing we also do is we started this YouTube series called Into the Interchain, where we essentially do deep dive, 30-minute to an hour discussions with anywhere from engineers to economists of a lot of the Cosmos protocols. So I would love, whether it's Brent or someone else from Umee, to host that Into the Interchain and give the Shade Protocol community exposure to kind of the lending platform of the future and all of the things that Umee's trying to solve with defining the risk-free interest rates of Web3. I think there's so much potential there, and I'd love to host you guys on the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be down for that. I can see if Brent can do it or someone else for sure. But yeah, thanks guys for joining us. We really appreciated the talk. Covered a lot of ground today, and hopefully everyone has a better understanding of Shade. If you're interested in learning more, obviously Shade Protocol is a co-host on this. Just click their protocol, go there. Shade_protocol. A lot of cool things in there, like the Stablecoin Summit. Sign up, learn a little bit more. Even if you're not interested in one particular stablecoin, they're all going to be there, so you can learn about all of them. So, yeah, thanks everybody for joining again. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Have a good one,
Thanks
guys.
again,
Happy
guys.
building.
Have a good one.